Hey guys, Bubba here. So if you haven't been around to see it, we released an in-depth video revealing and analyzing a fresh and exciting trick we call a prop squeeze. This video is based on knowledge from the previous video, so if you haven't watched that yet, I strongly recommend you go watch that first and get the full package. You can quickly get to that video with the card on the screen, but I'll provide the link to it in the description as well. Okay, assuming you have watched it, let's continue. As a disclaimer, the trick being showcased can potentially be exploitative. Any and all explanations in this video are purely to educate. We do not condone any misconduct, however we encourage exploration and experimentation in a private and safe environment. Note, the winter update completely patched the physics glitch this uses, so this video will just serve as documentation of what was possible. Some of the recordings in here were done prior to another update that made this trick drastically more difficult to do. To relay which ones were done before that patch, we'll label them on screen with pre-nerf. So the last time we were at the academy, we learned that an object becomes heavy for a player who lands on it, neglecting all physical influence from them. Using this information, we can get clever and do more than just get forced out of a spot. Why not force yourself into a spot? And just like that, we're out of the map. This trick is referred to as clipping, but you can always specify it with prop or box clipping. Let's try to get somewhere more roomy though. That's better. We've got a lot of room out here, and we've got a lot of rooms out here to explore. There's a vehicle depot with warthogs and mongooses. And yes, you can even use one of the turrets if you wanted to. It's a pretty cool area to get to, actually. Here's a view from the outside of the personal AI room. And look what we have here. It's the movement yard. We don't need that to show off our movement skills. This section over here is pretty eerie. Let's move on. Look, we got out far enough to find the pelicans. The next logical thing to do is destroy them. And what tower might this be?
Can you guess?
Live fire. So even though we don't have boxes we can do this with, we do have something else. If you remember from our other video, we showed that you can use the oddball as a prop too. Who would have thought something like the objective item could launch you like this? Maybe some Halo 3 tricksters would have, because this is all so similar to what you could do way back then with deployable covers. There was DC launching and DC clipping. And just like DC clipping, we can use the oddball to do, well, a ball clip. It's very difficult to do by yourself, but once you get on the other side of the geometry, you'll be free to explore wherever you can reach. There are plenty of fun spots to explore in each map, some of which you might think aren't even possible to get to. This one's another solo one that uses a corner that Jexire found consistency with, so shout out to him. This example clearly shows that you can get bumped out quite high sometimes, and not even into a standard corner. Notice how the primary wall I collide with is angled roughly 45 degrees off the path of my trajectory. I begin phasing into it and actually collide with the edge of a secondary wall, which then deflects me out of bounds, finalizing the clip. Once again, I'd like to express how precise ball bumps are. To get the most effective ball bump, or any pressure launch for that matter, you'll want to maximize the force the object applies to you. This is usually done by having the prop fall from the highest point possible. To retain that force and adjust your trajectory, you'll need to make sure the object, or ball in this case, is as closely aligned to the center of your player model as possible while opposing the angle in which you intend to launch. Since I want to launch backwards here, I have the ball land just in front of me. If the ball were to collide with me even just a tiny bit more to the left, right, or any direction, it could produce a significantly different trajectory. While it's possible to do it solo, it'll make it much easier and more convenient if you have a helper with you. Here I have my buddy Diversity to speed up the process and bump me more efficiently into the wall. Like I mentioned earlier though, there was an update that patched this up pretty darn good. We believe 343 increased the frequency that collision is checked, which would explain why I can be seen clipping out of bounds here, but only briefly before I rebound back inbounds. The update also made the walls slightly thicker on sides that are out of bounds, preventing clipping even more. That won't prevent us from finding ways though. In front of the big door on these barricades, you can do a ball clip to break out of the map. It won't be easy to get here, but if you do, you can make your way up through the entire complex like I do here. If that's not your cup of tea, you can use the same corner to clip through and go somewhere else. It's not always convenient to move around once out of bounds, but there are usually ways to traverse around. Sometimes you just gotta find the right wall to phase through, and boom, you might find yourself in a storage room like this. And oh yeah, I forgot to mention there is a huge sand pit down here. You can get here from this other spot near the graduation board, and if you do, you can explore all the wonders that await you. Like having your Spartan freeze in time and space once you go out too far. I find it most exciting when clipping into spots you can see within the map, bringing us to this area in the garage. Ever notice it? Ever want to get in there? Well, now you can. Using this trick at the door, we can very well go right through the doorway. This would be a great room to isolate yourself from all the others in the game, although there's not a lot to do in here. If only you could operate the forklift. As I mentioned earlier, just because a spot doesn't look like you can get to it, that doesn't mean that you can't get to it.
Ball dropped. We have the ball.
I can imagine this area would be pretty fun to play Duck Hunt on. Okay, so, before we move on from live fire, I've got one more thing to show you. It's a story about how 4 determined dudes embarked on a legendary journey. Using the fabled wizardry I've spoken of, the leader was in uncharted territory and requested aid from his fellow pioneer, Diversity. A young lad who used to go by Lights, now Bradek, accompanied him and pushed him to arrive in the same treacherous waters. What was seen as harmful witchcraft long ago was seen as the key to continuing their efforts. Bradek used this mortified technique, passing the torch to Diversity. As death loomed just beneath their feet, the front 2 explorers progressed. Another hindrance came their way, but their might prevailed. The same sorcery that helped them advance before led them to conquer the obstacle and strike untouched land. A wondrous overlook awaited as the one they called Bubba first set foot on it. Though far from it, Bradek channeled his efforts into gathering and supplying ordnance to Bubba. Needless to say, it was a success. One could only imagine how remarkable it would be for this newfound land to have ordnance of its own. The prowess wielded by any occupant of the territory would need to be tempered. Thankfully, these explorers had no intention of bringing such terror to the realm. They merely wanted to push themselves to their limits and see what was humanly achievable. And push they did. More utilities were brought up to the Overlook with the help of Bradek and Diversity, who had returned to him. They delivered their cherished key up there as well. Their ambitions hadn't been fulfilled yet. Diversity traveled back up to the Overlook as a 4th member named Nem joined him. Once Diversity got to the area with Bubba, the whole exploration team worked together to climb to the highest point. With perfect coordination, Bradek and Nem shot the climbers simultaneously and Diversity bumped Bubba through the intimidating obstruction. They were met with success, but also an impasse. Efforts were given by the journeymen later on, but restrictions stopped them in their path, time and time again. I hope you enjoyed that tale. Let's snap back and check another map. Like all of the other clips we've done, we start with a corner.
Ball dropped. We have the ball.
Remember that hitting the edge of another wall can help you get completely through. Once we're out of the map here, we can see that we're behind the door at bottom mid. Is this Dreamland? Well, we're gonna make it one. Let's go on a little journey. You don't need a grapple shot to navigate here. You can actually traverse with a good nade jump, but it's easy to miss. But thankfully, there's a barrier under the map that'll catch you like a net. An invisible force field of a net that's pretty fun to float around on. Just make sure not to move into the electric pool. Once you're down here though, you don't really have any options. Even if you have a grapple shot, you can't use it since you're touching an elastic barrier. If you get here and want a grapple shot, you can actually have someone hand it to you through the wall, just as Diversity does here. I don't think my commentary is necessary for this part, so I'll just let you see my out of bounds adventure. If you get on top of Whirlpool, you can find this edge that you can jump over. This will allow you to access the bottom portion of this area, and if you're bold enough, you can carefully grapple and swing to a floor near bottom mid. From here, we can get somewhat inside this electric toilet looking thing, and even crawl around the rim of the vortex. The last spot we tried to get to on Recharge was the centerpiece of the map, or what I like to call the washing machine. We clipped into it before this trick got nerfed, but lost the recording, so we tried to get a new one after the patch, but this was the closest we got.
Ball dropped. We have the ball.
The game teased us. These were probably happening because of those frequent collision checks I mentioned earlier. You can see how long it can take before one of those checks catches a problem and puts me where I should be. Heading to streets, we've got a nice perimeter by the drop wall. You can clip through the wall either by getting bumped from a distance, like that,
We have the ball.
or by getting bumped from the closer corner.
Ball dropped. We have the ball.
Here's a way to clip out of the map by yourself. Just like the other clip, I go from a right-angled corner to an obtuse-angled one. If you fall, that's totally fine. There's plenty of room under the map. If you want to get back up though, you've got a couple options, at least if you have grenades. It's interesting under the map though, because there are a bunch of red cubes scattered around. What's also interesting is this ball clip by the red room.
We have the ball.
I got it with Diversity pre-nerf, but it doesn't seem possible anymore, which leads us to this next one we also did pre-nerf. We managed to both clip into this alley simultaneously off the same ball bump. This is another fully fleshed out area, restricted from access in regular play, but leave it to us to give you access. We tried thoroughly to clip into the alley again after the patch, but had about the same luck as we did with the washer on
We
Recharge.
have the ball.
So close, yet so far. And lastly, we'll look at this fun clip in the back of the police
We
department.
have the ball.
You'd think I'm trapped in this room, but I've got a way I can slip out of it. I can even take it further by landing this tricky nade jump around a wall. Following this exact path, I can get above a different alley. It's hard to see exactly where I am, but it'll make sense in a second. With careful steps, I'll end up above the bar behind the B stronghold, which consequently feels like its own room. If I drop down behind the bar, I can see inside it very clearly, and from Diversity's perspective, it looks like I should be pouring out drinks. I guess I accidentally became a bartender here. Oh yeah, and one more thing before we leave streets. If you get out of the map with a cinder shot, you can hit this epic jump. Yes, I seriously landed on the coffee cups. They're the only things with solid collision in this room. This'll probably be the only time you see someone here, at least until we can forge on this map. Before we end the video, I should also point out that you can clip through geometry with fusion coils as well, among various other props. Not much more needs to be shown, just note that you should drop the coil like I do, otherwise you'll risk detonating it. I'll let my out of bounds exploration take us to the outro now. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Our Twitter handles are in the description too, so feel free to follow us there if you'd like. Anyway, have a good rest of the day. Peace.